Hi everyone, Parsa here from Warsaw Dynamics, and today I want to talk about approval path for Jira. This tool allows you to create and manage approvals across all Jira project types, including JSM. And the way it does it is through sort of a template-oriented structure where you create what we call a definition. You define the steps that you want to be taken. They can be sequential or non-sequential. You can add conditions to those steps, and eventually you will have this batch of steps that we call a definition, or a template, if you will. And you may then run that on any issue. You can also integrate the definition with a workflow so that the definition is triggered. The approvals are starting once, for instance, there is a change of status. And you can also tie the workflow and the definition in such a way that certain statuses are unavailable, for instance, to the users if a definition is not finalized. So essentially, it allows you to create more meaningful workflows by integrating an approval process that can work across all different project types in Jira. So before we start, let's have a little narrative. It will help us understand how all the features go together to deliver a decent product for real-life problems. Let's assume for a moment that we are an investment bank or an investment firm, right? We invest in real estate across the USA. Every time there is a new investment opportunity, we need to run that by the right people. Those people can be a single outside developer or an investor. There can be a group of people or a person just from your instance, right? How do we make sure that all the approvals go sequentially? How do we ensure that there is minimum error rate? And how do we automate everything? So let's go ahead and, based on that assumption, create the right set of environments that we want to deliver the product in. All right. So the first thing we want to do is ensure we have the right definition. Definition, as mentioned earlier, is simply a template. Now, let's navigate to approval path global settings. This is the way we refer to it because that's basically setting designated for the global admins. There's also project settings, and basic users can navigate the issues, and if they try to access those settings, they will see relevant information to themselves, like which approvals are awaiting their decision. Now, if you look at the definitions tab, from here you can see that I've already created some definitions, but we are going to go ahead and have a look at them together. Before we do that, let's just have a simple overall look at what a definition creation tab looks like. As you can see, it kind of looks like the automation. Now, let's go ahead and pick Ohio investment. Let's go to the edit mode. And here you can see that there is a sequence of steps that I've put together. To do that, I simply press and add step. And from here, I can select the step type that I want to use. In this case, I have picked an assignee field, which means I've navigated to issue fields, user, and selected assignee. Now, before I explain one by one the existing steps that I've already placed in here, I'm going to explain what each step does. So the user step is a static user, right? You get to pick, say, Parsa, and then what happens is we are going to ask Parsa to cast their vote, approve or deny when a step is reached. But there's also a group step where you can define a static group, which is what we've done here. We have selected a financial approval team to be a static group that's always required to cast their vote. Well, not always, because we've added a condition, but we'll get to that in a moment. What is nice about the grouper step is you get to choose a threshold. So here, if you notice, I've selected the number of votes required for a group step to pass is 2 and to fail is 1. What this means is I'm going to need 2 users from however many users are in that group to say yes, approved, before I can move from that step and consider it approved. But if only 1 user says no, that's going to be a rejected step. And pay attention that if a step is rejected, if it's denied the approval, automatically it will fail the whole approval altogether. Okay, so the concept of the way approval path works is that everyone agrees, right? If someone doesn't agree, it's not going to work out. The only situation, the only time that's an exception is if it's done during the, voting step. And that's a different step type. So if I click on the steps, you can see there's a vote step. This is the only time where there's an exception. You can define the votes. You can add more options. And the reason behind that is that those users are not actually deciding the fate of that step. There is going to be a moderator that's going to override everything. Of course, we would hope they would say approve if most people voted approve, but that's a different story. Okay, so we have a user, we have a group, we have the vote. Again, a different step. There is different sort of options to it, and we have email. So email is very useful if you have, say you have an investor outside of your company, or your management team is not within your instance, right? You have the CEO who's not using Jira at all. So if you need their approval, you can simply add their email address. We do have a platform outside of Jira where they can log in. They'll be able to see what they are approving. So they'll see the summary and description of the ticket, and they can cast their vote there. It will automatically update your instance. And that is exactly what we've used here, right? So this is also an email step. We are asking myself, an external user, to cast their vote. Okay. Now there is, I keep pressing cancel, I'm sorry. There is a bunch of other step types here. There is issue field user, issue field group, issue field email. All of these, as the name suggests, are based on the issue field, right? So they are more dynamic than saying, I want Parsa to cast his vote. And here you can say, I want the assignee to cast their vote. So whoever the assignee may be at the time when the step is reached or when the approval started. This will make a bit more sense in a moment when I will show you in action. But basically, you have the option to pick when do you want us to retrieve the information on who's to approve for this step type. So if you place this step somewhere on the second position or the third position on the list, on the sequence, you have the option to say don't pick who's the approver unless it reaches that step, until it reaches that step. The reason is sometimes you start the approval and the user in that, whichever field it may be, is user X. And by the time they reach here, the user may change. So you want to make sure that the user who's assigned at the time is the one who's casting their vote, right? If it's an approval start, then it will just fetch that information right as the approval starts. Okay. Issue field group, same concept. It will basically retrieve the group information from a field available on your issue, right? And issue field email is the same. You can have an email defined in a field. It can be the description. It can be a label or any other field that's available here where you can place an email address and we'll fetch that information and place that user as the approver. Okay, now there are two more options in the step types. One is automation and one is a webhook. They are, I would say, a family here. They're very similar in terms of function. Automation is a little bit of a simpler way of putting it. So this is an easier way, a more intuitive way to deal with those automations. What you can do is you can create definition scoped automations. So you say when this definition runs and when this a step is reached, do this. And you can say change the status or add a comment or remove or add a label, change user assigned, or set an entity property. If you're more technical, you'll know what that is. It's basically sort of it's an issue property, so it's a sort of a hidden field, and it can be recalled later. Very useful if you want to use the conditions feature, not to be mixed with the workflow conditions, but rather definition scoped conditions. Okay, we'll get to the conditions, don't worry about it. We're gonna get there in a moment. So automations, it's just another step. Once it's reached, it will do an automation, right? Change the status for you, for instance. A webhook is, it will allow you to communicate with an external, it's a webhook, right? It will allow you to communicate with an external system, or for example, in many cases, Jira's automation system. And you can run more advanced automations or automations elsewhere, right? So you can send maybe a notification to your Slack or ask Jira automation to do something because we are unable to do that from the automation step. Now, with that in mind, I want to take a quick look at the approval success step and approval rejection step. So approval success is basically an automation or a webhook step that is defined to only trigger if the result of the approval is positive, right? And of course, the same goes for the rejection, with the exception that the result should be a denied approval, right? If the approval is rejected, for example, change the status back to in progress. If the approval is successful, change the status to done, right? So that's kind of how it usually looks like in real life. Now, one more important step information, I know there is a lot of it, is the parallel group. So we mentioned earlier that you can have steps that are sequential, and you can have steps that are not sequential, right? They are not orderly. This, when you place a steps outside of a parallel group, that's sequential. So when you run this definition, once the approval starts, this user is going to first vote, then this group is going to be asked to vote, and then this external user is going to be asked to cast their vote. If I were to place them in a parallel group, I can just drag and drop them here. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter who's voting first. So the external user could see the notification, and they could go and cast their vote. Then maybe the assignee could see it, and so on, right? So there is no order. Everything else is the same. Still, everyone should cast their vote. This doesn't change the outcome. It's only changing the order. I'm going to delete that parallel group. And what else? On the definition level itself, you can define a name, so you can find your definition. The description is an internal note. You can have a note if you want for yourself, but this doesn't really affect your workflow. Definitions can be project scoped, and they can be global. If you leave it empty, like we did, this is a global definition, meaning you can run it on this project, and if you have additional projects, you can run it on the other projects as well, right? if you wanted to make it project specific, simply look for the project and just say, I wanted to run an approval path for Jira project only, right? I'm going to leave it global. And then you have the conditions. So why don't we visit the conditions in a moment, and then we come back here, because I think it would make more sense. Just a moment, we'll skip that for a second. You can make definitions available on JSM. There are two different levels of interactivity when it comes to JSM. So you can make it so customers are able to view the approval process. So you have an internal approval going on, and you want to provide them visibility. That can do it. There's also another option to allow you not only for the customers to view the running approval, but also that they can run the definition and create an approval process, right? So they will see the definition and they will be able to say start, and that would ask the users to that would run this path. One more important last information about the definition. Abstain. Abstaining is an option, although my recommendation is go to our documentation, read what abstain does, how it really works, because it's a little bit more complex. There are edge cases where you need to be aware of how abstain actually interacts with the approval process. And if you don't want abstaining to be an option for your users, for the project admins, if they are setting definitions and you want to have outcome 100% all the time, and that's another thing, you will always have an outcome. So even if people abstain, you'll always have an outcome, and that's why you need to read the documentation. But if you don't want people to abstain, you can set that up from the settings, just disable abstaining altogether, and no one will be able to abstain. Use that option. Automatic reminders can be set based on definition level, but they can also be set globally, and they can be set at approval level too. So if a definition is run, you can, before running that definition on that issue, you can also set the reminders. We are going to get to that in a moment. Okay, let's go to the conditions really quickly. Okay. The way conditions work is that we use the Jira expressions to define a condition. Jira expressions allow you to look at the issue fields within the issue and say, hey, if this field, if this status, if some certain thing is set to that or is not set to that, then this is the condition that we want or we don't want to allow for an action to happen. Okay, so let's go. We have a Texas condition. So a Texas condition is basically saying, let's open the edition. Okay. Okay. A Texas condition is basically saying there is an issue field, issue field 158. On an issue, I'll show you this is a location field. It says it should be set to Texas. If it's not set to Texas, show this message. This is the error message that shows when the condition isn't met. And you can customize this, right? You place this message yourself. And then the question is, who do you want to evaluate it as? Normally, just leave it to current user. If you want to learn more about that, just check out the documentation or leave us a comment. I'll explain. And of course, the conditions can also be project specific. So even if your definition isn't project specific, the condition can be project specific and apply only if the definition is run on that particular project, right? Again, I'm going to leave it empty so it's global. And we allow you to just test that, right? You set a condition and you get to just check. I don't know, let's say, does it work? So it actually says the condition is met on this issue that I randomly picked. So it's probably set to Texas. And basically it works. Okay. Now, this condition here, I created because I wanted to limit the definition as a whole. I wanted to say, if this definition isn't meeting the criteria of Texas, if the location isn't set to Texas, don't run the definition altogether, right? Don't run it. If it's set to Ohio or to California, don't allow for the Texas definition to run. There are other conditions that I've also defined here. So more than $5 million, budgets for $1 million or higher, and there is an all budgets condition that I've set. So there's another issue field called the budget. You will see it in a moment. And I'm saying if it's bigger than zero, right, any budget, even if it's $1, just apply this. As long as the location is met, the condition for location is met, always ask person this or that, the first sequence on my approval, the first step in the sequence of my approval, ask them to cast their vote. But if it's less than $1 million, don't ask the second sequence or don't ask the last sequence, right? So this is not applying to the whole definition, and I'll show you how I tie that so it doesn't interfere with the whole definition. But it will skip a particular step where this condition is tied to it if the condition isn't met. So we have those conditions defined. Now I'm going to go back to the definitions, and I'm going to show you how I tie them together. If you look at this definition here, you can see that they have the condition sign. Yeah. So that's why it's here. It says Ohio, right? So I just look up the definition that I made by name. So this one has Ohio. I just select Ohio as the condition that I want to apply to this definition as a whole, and it's applied. Now, if I wanted to have a condition tied to this particular step, I simply navigate to the step and I select the step from here. As you can see here, we have the all budget condition, we have the $1 million condition, and we have the $5 million condition, right? Now, let's go ahead and see how that actually looks like when we run a definition. So let's go to our board. Oh, sorry. Let's go to our board. And we have a ticket for Ohio investment, $500,000. Okay, so this is the location field that we were looking at, and we're going to set that to Ohio, and the budget is $500,000. Okay. Now we go to our approval path. We're going to have an assignee, because remember the first user on the sequence is the assignee. So if it's empty, it's going to skip it. We don't want that to happen. Or in some cases, it may throw an error saying, okay, we are unable to run because all the steps are empty, for example, right? Now, when I go to approval path, you have two tabs. You have the new. So these are your definitions that are reusable, right? You can run California definition as many times as you want. But every time you run it, it becomes an approval, right? It becomes a running approval. So right now, no approval is running. Now we're going and saying, okay, California, let's go. We can't run California because this is Ohio investment, and that's how the conditions actually work. So we're going, oh, sorry, there was an oopsie. Let's go with Ohio definition. There we go. Ohio runs. And if you look, even though there were three users or three steps on the definition, only the assignee is asked to approve. I can approve that. Now, I know some of you watching this video are going, hey, why are you manually starting the process? You can do that automatically. Don't worry about that. That's what we're going to do in a moment. We're going to set it up so that it automatically starts. But before we do that, just for the sake of showing you, I'm just going to create a very dramatic number here, 500 million. And I'm going to run Ohio again. And now notice that since that number is so big, it bypassed both of the cases. So this was $1 million or above, I believe, and this one was like $5 million or above. 500 million bypasses both of those pretty well. And that's why we have both of those users asked to provide their consent. Mind you, there is no difference whatsoever when it comes to the back end. Technically speaking, approval and consent are exactly the same thing. The only difference is organizations that use our tools have a different definition for what an approval is and what a consent is. And so we have defined two different options that they can pick from, right? And that's all that is. We can, of course, reject this one. And as you can see, it rejected right away, right? Now, before we jump into the workflow integration, I'm going to do one more thing because it has to do with the definition. There's also an option for delegation. So delegations are useful not only for when you are on holidays, but if you have a lot of approvals in hand, you want someone else to help you go through those approvals, you can create delegations. If you are an admin, you can create delegations for any users, right? You can say, I want user X to be delegated by user Y when it comes to approvals because you're the admin. If you're a basic user, you can only delegate yourself, right? You cannot decide for others what to do. So we're going to go to the addition of this delegation. And as you can see here, we have a delegator. Kamil, my boss, is delegating his approval processes to me, right? And we have groups. So basically what this means is if there is a step, a group step, and Kamil is part of that group, he can say, Parsa can take action on my behalf also within that group, right? And you can add all of them at once, or you can customize, okay, I don't want him to take decision on this group, that group, but only from this group. All right, I'm going to add everything. And you can also define projects where I can approve on behalf of Kamil. If you leave it empty, as we've discussed earlier, leave it empty, it means it's global, right? You can, of course, set a start and end date. And of course, if you leave it empty, it also means that it's going to stay on until you say otherwise, right? So we're going to save that. And what I'm going to do is go back to the ticket. I'm going to change this to Kamil's user, the assignee. And remember, the first step is not a static, right? It's taking whoever is assigned. So if I go now, and if I run Ohio, same definition, we didn't change the definition. It's going to say, okay, Parsa started the definition, but Kamil is the person who's on the active step. And here it says decide on behalf of Kamil, right? So I can decide on behalf of Kamil. And as you can see, it goes through action taken by delegatee. Okay. So that's delegation in a nutshell. Now, let's go to the part where we make things automatic. Okay. To do this, of course, you can do it through APIs and automations and all of that. But the easiest way to do it, and probably the best way to do it, is you just navigate to the project settings and go to your workflows. And you can simply edit your workflows. So we support post functions and we support conditions. What you are going to use here for this case is the post function. I'm going to also use a condition just to show you how things work. But I'm going to say when it transitions to waiting for approvals, let's start the approval, right? Ask people to approve. And if I go add post function, So there is the approval path actions. That's the one you're looking for. Add. And from here you can pick the definition. Notice that it's telling you some of those definitions are global and some are project specific. So this will help you decide if you are editing a workflow that is project specific. Make sure that the definition you are running it on is matching the project, right? Otherwise it will not run. And that's why we are showing you this information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick Ohio, add, and that's it. Ohio will start upon transition to waiting for approval. Now I'm going back to the workflow, prefer the diagram, and I'm going to go ahead and say I also want to hide the done status unless my approval is finalized, right? So I'm going to go again, set a condition this time. I'm going to say approval path actions. Sorry, I think I made a mistake. Yeah, I picked post function again. I need to pick a condition. Okay, add a condition. And you're going to look for approval path block transition until approval. So pick that one. And from here, you can decide which approval you want. So I'm going to pick Ohio as well, because I want to show you what it looks like when you pretty much automate the whole process, right? So let's go ahead. We don't need a backup. We'll be fine. Okay. Now, let's go here, back to our board, and let's create a new ticket. Okay. I'm gonna set the location right because we don't want it to fail. If an automation or workflow fails, and when you are testing it, we also provide you with logs. I will show you where you can find the logs in a moment. But in this case, we're just gonna remember about this, not miss it out. Okay. So now, if we go to approval path, you can see the definitions, but there is no running approvals, of course. Now we're gonna say waiting for approvals, change the status. I think if I just did that. Okay, yeah, there we go. There was a little lag, but we made it. Ohio investment path is running, right? So it's automatically started running. Now, if I were to take action, notice that the done status is not available, right? And since I rejected it, it doesn't allow me to go to the done status. What I'm going to do is go back to the definition because I'm not part of the I'm not part of the group, so I'm going to a little bit edit the definition so I can show you what happens if I approved, if I took action. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's run Ohio manually. Or you could simply change the status back and forth. Usually you would have an automation that would put it back in progress. And then you would again go through the status change and it would automatically start the approval. Now let's go with approval. And now you can see that done status is now finally available. So we can call it a day. Okay. So that's how the definition works, how you can tie conditions to it, and how you can set up the workflow, how you can set up delegations. What else is left to discuss? Let's go back to the global settings. We see everything here. And the first tab that you're looking at once you navigate to the global settings or project settings as well is the approvals tab, right? So from here you can see all of the approvals. As you can see, these are the approvals we just ran moments ago, Ohio investment path. And you can see their status. So this one was approved, this was rejected, one of them is still in progress, and this is the last one that we rejected one first and then we approved them. You can see their progress, you can see the time where they started, what they were modified. What is really nice about this view is you can use our filters, and you can save the filters similar to how you would with JQL searches on Jira. And we actually allow you to use JQL to look for the approvals as well. Additionally, important to note here is that you can export this view. So if you are doing reporting on the approvals for visibility purposes, just export to CSV and you will have everything in one place. Then we have the activity tab. So the difference here is this is every action that was taken, everything is recorded. It doesn't show statuses or anything. This is not about the approval, this is about the actions that were taken on the approval. So decisions that were made, if they were started, rejected, accepted, and so on. Also fully exportable. We're already familiar with the definitions, I hope. Same with conditions and delegations. Now, let's navigate to the settings, general settings. From earlier, if you remember, I did mention that abstain action can be fully turned off, so feel free to do that. Trust me, in most cases it's better not to have abstain, but some of our customers do have the need, so make sure to read the documentation on that. Then we have the quick button. So this is talking about the approval view. So from here you can decide what to do. Let's go back to the settings. Yeah, but none of those approvals required my approval. Maybe I can find one that does. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, there we go. So you see approve or reject, right? I can take action from here. It will send me to the issue, but I can do it. Now back to the settings. You can require commenting upon actions. Most of the time, it's either for rejections or abstain. For approval, normally the way I do it is like that. But you can have it set up if you want to comment, if you want people to comment why they rejected something or why they abstained, you can set that up. About notifications, remember that you can always send manual notifications from the approval view or from the running approval view on the issue. But of course, there is more advanced topics here. This is about taking action on the email notification that you receive. So if this is turned on, what it will do is it will give the option to the receiver of the notification to take action, but they will still be redirected to Jira, where they will be authenticated before they can take the action, because we want to make sure it's the right person. If you want them to take action directly, truly directly from their from the email address, you would require to turn this on. This is token based, so it works for 24 hours if I'm not, yes, it works for 24 hours. And during that 24 hours, they can take action, right? After that, it will expire. They will have to log into their Jira to take action. I believe that this feature is internal user specific, exclusive, sorry, meaning I don't think external users can benefit from this. Anyway, they will have to log into the external users dashboard for that. But honestly, I'm not 100% sure because I know it's on the roadmap to be added for external users as well. Allow sending email approval reminders. So yes, this is for the manual approvals. You can allow it or you can turn it off. And of course, automatic reminders. This is at high level. So what this means, every time you create a new definition, it's going to set it to 1 day. But again, remember that you can set definition specific reminders, and you can also parametrize. I'll show you what parametrization is in a moment, but you can basically have this at 1 day. But if you have an urgent case, you can change that automatic reminder to a different thing, right? So, or maybe here you have like every 5 day, because it will make more sense. And then on a definition level, you will say this is urgent, so let's do it every 1 day, right? Notification mechanism, this has to do with, okay, Jira notification or direct email. Jira notification is also an email, but it's an email sent by Jira, not by us, right? And direct email is the email that we send, and it's more customizable. And by that, I mean, you can go to messages, and from here you can customize the outgoing emails. You can also integrate with your own email provider. You can use SMTP if you want to integrate with more unique email providers, but you can also use Gmail and Outlook easily, fast integration. Now let's go to preferences. We allow you to change the UI and UX of how your users are interacting with approval path. Most likely you don't want to have all options turned on, but also every user is able to customize it for themselves as well. So you don't have to worry about that too much. This is just basically giving them the option to choose. If you don't want to give them the option, just deselect them, and they will not be able to set it anything other than the one that you've picked, right? Because again, remember, this is global settings. It's dictating everything. Now we go to JSM preferences. If you are running JSM approvals, but this is purely internal and you don't want your customers to see anything, you don't want them to even see the approval path tab, you can just turn this off and they will not be able to view approval paths at all. I'm gonna turn it back on. Then, very important feature, very tricky feature. Permission schemes allows you to control how your internal users are able to interact with our tool, right? So basic users, can they create definitions? Can they delete the approvals? Can they start approvals? All of that can be defined by integrating with Jira permission schemes. What is very tricky and very important to know is, again, read the documentation before you turn these buttons on, right? Once you turn them on, we are going to remove all basic permissions from your basic users. So if you are an admin, you may start getting messages. If you do this on a running project, you're going to get messages, hey, I'm unable to view approval paths, I'm unable to start approvals, I'm unable to approve, because we simply remove their permissions. So don't turn this on unless you have the time to go ahead and actually customize them and make sure that they behave the way they are supposed to behave, right? That they fit your requirements. We expose API keys if you want to do some more advanced automations, if you want to create some sort of notifications, and most importantly, if you want to migrate from other approval tools to approval path, we allow for the APIs to help you create definitions, help you create conditions and tie them together. And of course, you can also have approval actions taken by the API. So you can start definitions, run the approvals basically, or delete them for cleanups and so on. So you can create and you can utilize APIs. And this is where I mentioned earlier that you can use instance errors to see what's happening with the tool. If something fails, be it the workflow or in the conditions, so you get to see some type of information that would hopefully help you resolve the matter. Okay, now we've talked about all the main settings. By the way, you can also export this view, right, to CSV for reporting. Now, let's go back to the issue for a second, because I want to show you parameterization. Okay. So let's say, let's say we want to run Ohio, but we want to make it a little bit different this time, right? Say we've already ran it, there was a problem, and we want to run it again, and honestly depends on, it's very specific to the case. So you can do something like that. You can change the name so that you can easily find it, right? And you can, again, as we mentioned earlier, you can change the automatic reminders. So at this level, you can say, when I start this, let's say you want to annoy someone really bad, you can say send a notification every hour, right? Even though it's normally set to 5 days or 1 day, depending on your global and definition level, you can change that prior to starting it. And from here, you can also set expiry. And this is a very nice feature that we are going to expand to definition and global settings soon. It's on the roadmap. Nonetheless, you can actually set expiration for approvals. You can say this one is valid only by the end of this month and start it. After that, the definition is not going to be able to run. The approval is not going to be finalized, sorry. Okay. I do hope that I'm not missing out on any important information. Thank you so much for watching. If you do have any feedback, questions, doubts, feel free to leave a comment or simply navigate to the marketplace listing. Approval path for Jira is the full name of our tool on Atlassian Marketplace. And navigate to the support portal. We'll be happy to help you out. Hope this video was helpful, and wishing you a good day, good evening, wherever you are. Have a great one.